Bishop Gaiters, a lot of people in our comments are talking about this interview that I just did this morning on InfoWars with David Knight. A lot of people are very interested in some of the comments that Alan Dershowitz made when I spoke with him on Saturday. But today we're going to be picking up with part 3 on your series about the Synagogue of Satan, the architects of inversion. Welcome back to the show, Bishop.
Jason, I am so very excited to be back on Crowdsource the Truth. I believe is one of the most powerful outlets in America today. I really, really believe that. And you are doing a fantastic job in bringing people to the knowledge of the truth.
Thank you, Bishop. I couldn't do it without you. You're a very important part of the team here on Crowdsource the Truth. I really like building teams, and I recognize that I can't do everything myself. And without your contributions and the amazing knowledge and input that you're bringing to Crowdsource the Truth, I wouldn't be here right now. I think it's important for us to begin each of these episodes in the series, Bishop, by reminding everybody, you are not accusing, I am Jewish. And
right.
You are not, and I am not accusing Jewish people of doing things. I have seen historically on the internet, a lot of people attribute this synagogue of Satan to the Jewish people. But the main thrust of your series on this is to explain to people that way back in history, a group of Khazars came along and decided to infiltrate the Jewish religion, to co-opt it, to call themselves Jews, so that dastardly acts that they carried out could be blamed on Jews and would foment hatred and division between Jewish people and non-Jewish people.
Well, and that's the situation. That's the crux of the matter, because there is so much anti-Semitism, not only in this country, but around the world. I am a strong, powerful advocate for the state of Israel. But you have a group of men with Khazarian blood that have infiltrated Judaism and are trying to hijack it to make the Jewish people look bad. And again, we have to expose anti-Semitism at its very root.
I'm definitely for that. I've experienced more of that, Bishop, since I started Crowdsource the Truth than I ever did before. And I have to tell you, I detect that the people that are engaging in this Jewish hatred online, they're playing on the same exact set of rules that you've been describing to us that have been used by these Khazarians. Jimmy Moriarty refers to them as the Khazarian Mafia. But this is basically what they do. They want to divide people, Christians and Jews, blacks and whites. They don't want us to come together in the way that you and I have. You and I are of different religions, different races, but yet we don't focus on the differences and we're not cutting each other down. We are focusing on our similarities and our strengths. And in fact, in many ways, our differences are our strengths.
Absolutely. And we have to have those differences. That is the very key, that what makes us human beings, right? Living a spiritual experience, and also as spiritual beings living a human experience. We have to embrace diversity, not just in this country, around the world. And this is why God created us in his image, you and I together as brothers. I don't look at you as white and you don't look at me as black, but for some reason we're living in a time where this nation is being manipulated, right, through the lens of racists like Louis Farrakhan and Reverend Al Vitamin B deficient Sharpley. These devils are race pimps. They have no love for Black America, but they are manipulating the emotions of Black Americans, right? And this is part of the synagogue of Satan that we have to absolutely expose today.
Absolutely. And there have been so many things in recent history. We've spoken about the Trayvon Martin hoax. People might remember back in 1985. I think, Bishop, you told me that you grew up in New York. You probably remember that incident where a gentleman named Bernard Goetz was accosted on the subway. he defended himself by shooting the attackers. He's white, they were black. It was immediately turned into a racial matter. He was accused of being a racist. And this was just a few years before the race riots erupted in Los Angeles after police brutally beat Rodney King. We're seeing a lot of police activity now around this COVID-19 thing. Tensions are building. The summer is very close. There's a lot of things for people to be on the lookout for and concerned about.
Absolutely. You and I had talked about the former attorney for the family of Trayvon Martin, right? Benjamin Crump.
Yes.
He's a boule. He's a boule. Okay.
Yeah.
And now he's representing the family of that jogger that was killed.
Right.
So this is what, again, it's a game, Jason. They're always choosing these boule attorneys, not because these attorneys care about these families who lost their loved ones. It's all a part of this problem reactionary solution that we have to expose today.
Yeah. And anytime you tell us that a prominent member of the black community is a boule, there's somebody who comes up in the comments and says, oh, the bishop is making this all up. But of course, Benjamin Crump, he says it on his own website. He's a proud member of the boule. So I recognize that people want to hold us accountable, but people have to go back and listen to the series and the previous shows that we've done, Bishop. I've put together a playlist that people can access on the Crowdsource the Truth YouTube channel, where they can see all of our past shows. And frankly, most of the questions that people ask are answered in those shows. So I hope that people will take a look and view the playlist. Bishop, we've also created a simulcast of the shows that we do together that people can watch on your YouTube channel. People can find it by going to the Global Spiritual Revolution YouTube channel, and it looks like, now wait a minute. Oh, there we go. Yes. Darn it. I don't know what's going on, Bishop. We're not having the simulcast right now. So after the broadcast, I'll make sure this video goes up on your YouTube channel. But people should definitely search for the Global Spiritual Revolution Radio YouTube channel and subscribe. Bishop, people can also listen to you on the radio if they go to liferadionj.com, or if they're in the New York and New Jersey area and tune in to 92.9 FM. Really, the most important thing for our viewers and listeners to do is to support the Bishop's Global Spiritual Revolution. People can do that by going to paypal.me/GSRR Media Group. And I couldn't bring you these shows each week without the Bishop. So I hope that Crowdsource the Truth viewers will sponsor the Bishop. What have you prepared for us today, Bishop Gaiters?
Absolutely. Volume 3 of the Synagogue of Satan, the Architects of Inversion. And again, quickly to Benjamin Crump, your beautiful listeners can go to the Benjamin Crump Institute's website. Again, the Benjamin Crump Institute website. And it is the third paragraph down. And once they get to that third paragraph down, it is the fourth and fifth sentence that says specifically that Benjamin Crump is a boule. And he's also a member of the Michael R. Moore Lodge. Okay, Michael R. Moore is an ordained minister within the Church of God in Christ, who is worshiped as a god within that lodge. Okay, so this is what we have to expose. All right, so then the Synagogue of Satan, the Architects of Inversion, we left off concerning the family bloodline of Valerie June Jarrett. Now, what I'm about to unpack for your listeners for the next hour and a half to 2 hours, I am not castigating Miss Valerie June Jarrett. I'm not castigating her parents, and neither am I castigating Barack Obama, okay, his wife and his children. It's never personal with me, Jason. It's about the facts as we are going to unpack these architects of inversion. So then Valerie June Jarrett, born November 14th, 1956. She was not born here in the United States, Jason. She was born in Iran, in the city, in the territorial geographical location called Shiraz, capital S-H-I-R-A-Z, Iran. So Shiraz, Iran. Her father was sent there, right? And her father, his mentor, we're talking about the father of Valerie Jarrett, Dr. James E. Bowman. He had a close mentor, a man by the name of Dr. Alf Irving. And I'm going to come to him in the next 10 to 15 minutes because he too was a eugenicist. So Miss Jarrett was born in Shiraz, Iran, during the last of the dynastic families in Iran, the Pahlavi dynasty, capital Pahlavi. So it's interesting, Jason, that Valerie Jarrett is born within Shiraz, Iran. And at that time, the Pahlavi dynasty had eventually produced the present day, the Mujahideen. Again, I'm not connecting Valerie Jarrett to the Muslim Brotherhood or to the Mujahideen, but the Pahlavi dynasty, capital Pahlavi, was the last dynastic family when Valerie June Jarrett was born. So her father quickly was a man by the name of Dr. James E. Bowman. Okay. Now, he was a pathologist and a eugenicist. He was the director of pathology in medicine, which his specialty was in genetics and African American studies at the Pritzker School of Medicine there at the University of Chicago within the Department of what they call genetic medicine. Also, Dr. Bowman was also the director of the section of genetic medicine, also there at the University of Chicago. So then Dr. James E. Bowman, born in Washington, D.C., he died back in 2011, okay? So again, according to Judicial Watch, and mind you, as a side note, the Jarrett family, more specifically with Valerie, she has not sued the Judicial Watch Corporation, all right, or that think tank, because what they wrote was true. So the 2015 op-ed in the Judicial Watch link, it talks about the family, communist family blood ties of Valerie June Jarrett. That's an excellent picture there, Jason. So then, according to the
Bishop, I want to point something out to you in this picture that I only noticed from looking at, on my screen, I get a small icon of this, and this is amazing. I'm very interested in the concept of perception. I'm a big fan of Salvador Dali's artwork, and this vase sitting on the shelf next to Dr. Bowman, I don't know if people can see it. When you zoom in on the vase, it just looks like a lovely pattern. But as I zoom out, what I see is this pattern is that spiral that the FBI says is an image used by pedophiles.
Wow, I did not know that. My God, can you repeat that again, Jason, what you just said?
Yeah. Well, when I look at it on the full screen over here to my left, it's difficult to see. This just looks like a floral pattern on the vase. But when I zoom out, and if people back away from their screen or their phone, when I look at it on the iPad here, I can see that this floral pattern is arranged in a spiral. And it's very similar to that spiral that the FBI unclassified document said is used by pedophiles to identify, you know.
Wow, you got a great eye for detail, my friend. That's why you are a great host. And we talked about Dwayne Wade some weeks ago.
Right, exactly.
Right, of those miniature pyramids, which was also representative of one of those logos that was declassified by the FBI, right? So my question is, why would Dwayne Wade have that type of braids on his head? So that's another topic for another day. So, but the FBI files, excellent find there, Jason, and just jump in anytime. So according to the FBI files, the Bowman family, we're talking about the parents of Valerie June Jarrett, are heavily communistical. They were heavily connected in members of the Communist Party USA, okay, going back to the 1930s. Now, there's a 1990 book that her father had written entitled Genetic Variation in disorders in peoples of African origin. Okay, again, the genetic variation of uh, diseases and disorders within people of African descent or African origin. But his background, talking about the father of Valerie Jarrett, his background is in genetics and eugenics. So he studied um, genetics and eugenics at the Galton Laboratory, named after Dr. Francis Galton,
Wow.
the father, right, the father of eugenics here in the Western Hemisphere, along with Dr. Charles Davenport. So then, Dr. Bowman in 1961 and 62 attends the University College in London and is a part of the Galton Laboratory between the years of 1961 and 62 as an associate professor. Now, as we juxtapose to 1950, so then Dr. James E. Bowman is a Soviet agent, according to the FBI files on Judicial Watch, because
Whoa.
Dr. Bowman is closely connected to a Soviet agent by the name of Alfred Stern. Okay. Now, Alfred Stern was a former Illinois housing administrator. Okay. And the wife of Alfred Stern, her name was Martha Dodd, capital D-O-W-D. She was signified as a spy and an enemy combatant, okay, representing the Soviet Union. So then Alfred Stern, his wife, Martha Dodd, including Martha Dodd, who is the daughter, was the daughter of William Edward Dodd. So William or Bill Edward Dodd, he was the first ambassador to Germany representing FDR's administration. So I'm just connecting.
Sorry, Bishop,
this.
real quick.
Go right ahead.
When I Googled these people, NYU came up. Is this the Stern family that finances the Stern School of Business and all this stuff at NYU?
Yes.
Wow. NYU owns basically every hospital in New York now.
Yes. And you know what? And I'm as I'm speaking, I'm getting emails and your listeners and my listeners asking me, could Alfred Stern and David Stern, the former commissioner of the NBA, be related?
Oh.
I don't know that info. So
Wow.
That's something we have to look into. David Stern, the former commissioner of the National Basketball Association, who was very close to Kobe Bryant and like other players as well, could he be the son or the blood connection to Alfred Stern and his wife, Martha Dodd, who were connected to the father of Valerie Jarrett, Dr. James Bowman, as we're just slowly unpacking this synagogue of Satan here. So then Dr. Bowman, who is the chair of pathology, was the chair of pathology at a children's hospital, Jason, in Shiraz, Iran, called Nemazi Hospital, capital Nemazee, Nemanese Hospital, okay, that according to U.S. intelligence, going back as early as the 1960s, this children's hospital was the petri dish for a lot of biological testing upon children. I'll come back to that.
That was in Iran?
In Iran, yes, sir. In Shiraz, Iran, capital Shiraz. Okay. So then, Dr.
How do we spell that hospital, Bishop?
Yes, sir. Capital N like in no, E-M, M like in Mary, A-Z-E-E. Namazi Hospital in Shiraz, Iran. Now, I don't know if it still exists or not, but according to the FBI declassified files, going back to the early 1960s, this hospital was experimenting, okay, different viruses upon children in order to see how the bodies of these children would react. I would definitely come back to that if we have time today. So then in 1973, from 1973 to 1984, Dr. James E. Bowman becomes the director of comprehensive sickle cell Center. He is the director of the Sickle Cell Center at the University of Chicago, and this is according to the National Institutes of Health. Now, as a side note, prior to 1910, there was no national or international cases of sickle cell anemia. And I'm not saying it's a biological weapon that's targeting people of African descent. But prior to 1910, my research, I have not found any evidence that the sickle cell anemia, which Black people are the primary carriers, predates 1910. That's something that we have to look into. So then Dr. Bowman becomes a fellow at the, yes, sir. Absolutely.
Lost you for a second.
Oh, absolutely. So it's interesting, my friend, that Dr. James E. Bowman became a fellow at the Hastings Center, okay, here in upstate New York. So now, what is the Hastings Center? The Hastings Center was created in 1969 with money through the Rockefeller Foundation, where one of their key proponents of depopulation, okay? So then the mentor, and this gets more uglier here now, Jason, as we're talking about the synagogue of Satan being the architects of inversion. So this Dr. Bowman, his mentor was a man by the name of Dr. Alving, capital A-L-F, then capital A-L-V-I-N-G. So Dr. Alving invited a young Dr. James E. Bowman, okay, to the University of Chicago in order to help Dr. Alvin in the studies of eugenics, including malaria. So then Dr. Bowman, whose mentor is Dr. Alvin, Dr. Alvin sends Dr. Bowman, this is the father of Valerie Jarrett, sends Dr. Bowman to Mexico, to Ghana, to Nigeria, Ethiopia, including the nation of Niger. Why? To begin the testing of malaria upon the children in these regions. And see, again, I know a lot of African Americans, they're not going to like this, but my job, Jason, is to expose the truth. It's never personal with the bishop, as we're talking about exposing the synagogue of Satan. So this Dr. Alving, okay, who goes back to the 1940s, Dr. Alving, the mentor of Dr. James E. Bowman, the father of Valerie June Jarrett, Dr. Alving studied and conducted medical experiments, okay, on prison patients, on men who stayed at the Stateville Penitentiary, okay, near Joliet, Illinois. And this goes back to the 1940s. This is the mentor of Dr. James E. Bowman, Dr. Alving, that going back to the 1940s, a study was conducted by the Department of Medicine at the University of Chicago in conjunction with the U.S. Army and the State Department, where they chose Dr. Alving, okay, the mentor of Dr. James E. Bowman, to take part of the Stateville Penitentiary malaria study program. So then when we talk about eugenics and when we talk about exposing the architects of evil, so according to a lot of historians, Jason, the Stateville Penitentiary malaria study program that was enacted by Dr. Alving was brought up after World War II during the Nuremberg medical trials. Many of the Nazi doctors knew Dr. Alving, okay?
Wow.
And so
I was going
during
to say, Bishop, sorry,
Yes.
there seems to be a huge fascination with doing experiments with prisoners. I suppose
Yeah.
because they generally don't have money and lawyers and families that know what's going on with them.
Absolutely. And these guys were offered anywhere from $25 to $100 per prisoner, per shot. So in other words, this state, and excellent point that you made, that you brought up there, Jason, concerning prisoners being used as guinea pigs. So the Stateville Penitentiary malaria study program, which lasted 29 years. So then Dr. Alf Alving and his staff from the University of Chicago, same school that Barack Obama taught law in. Dr. Alving was working in conjunction with the administrators of the Stateville Penitentiary to offer shorter sentences, okay, on their beds, to offer shorter sentences if the men would consent to be injected with malaria.
Wow.
This
Don't you
is the
die
man-
from malaria?
Yes, a lot of these guys, they were 800 men,
Wow.
800 men who had contracted malaria because the University of Chicago, along with the US government through Dr. Alf Alving, was injecting these men with malaria to see how the anatomy of these prisoners would respond. That is genocide, Jason, as we're exposing the synagogue as Satan. So
can I point something else out to you, Bishop?
Excellent. Yes, sir.
So on this, whenever you bring up something important like the penitentiary, I like to check it out on Google Earth. I noticed something right away. Can you see on the screen share, there's this, I don't know what you'd even describe this as, but it seems like an unusually tall smokestack of some kind. And I haven't seen this at any of the other penitentiaries that we've looked at around the country. I don't know if you have any idea what this is, but there seems to be some kind of giant boiler or something attached to this building, and it seems like they're burning something that is shooting out of this smokestack.
Going back to one of the most evil regimes in history, the Third Reich. Right? They were cremating the precious Jewish people. And so I believe, and again, you're pointing out something, Jason, I never had even considered, that these men who were contracted or injected with malaria probably was cremated because of this Dr. Alf Alving being backed by the University of Chicago through the US government, who is also the mentor of the father of Valerie Jarrett, Dr. James E. Bowman. Excellent find there, Jason. Anytime, jump right in. So then, as we're unpacking and exposing these architects of evil, so then Dr. Alf Alving, going back to the 1940s, offered through the administrators of this prison, Stateville Penitentiary, right, during this malaria study, offered shorter sentences to these prisoners. And according to the Nuremberg medical trials, Jason, right after the advent of World War II, many of the Nazi doctors, not only did they know Dr. Alf Alving, but they even said his name during in those weeks leading up to the hanging of these Nazi devils. Dr. Alf Alving is a eugenicist, okay? This is the mentor of Dr. James E. Bowman. So Dr. Alving was what we call a nephrologist. Allow me to spell that. Capital NEPHROLOGIST. So a nephrologist, their specialty is on sicknesses and diseases that affect the human kidney or the human kidneys. So then Dr. Alving was a nephrologist, one who specializes in, or his concentration is diseases infecting the kidneys of every human being. So then the assistants of Dr. Alving was a man by the name of Dr. Ray Dern and Dr. Ernest Butler, capital Beutler. Again, Dr. Ernest Butler or Baitler, capital Beutler, also professors from the University of Chicago, where they had injected 800 prisoners over a 29-year protracted period of time. And what were they injected with? With the virus, with the disease of malaria, so that the US government, through Dr. Alf Alving, the mentor of the father of Valerie June Jarrett, Dr. James E. Bowman, so that the US government can provide a vaccination to take away the pathogen called malaria. Again, this is eugenics, Jason. Dr. Alf Alvin should have been hung just like the Nazis right after the advent of World War II. So then Dr. Alf Alvin, who is the mentor of Dr. James E. Bowman, purposely, Jason, purposely infected also psychiatric patients at the Illinois State Hospital with malaria.
Wow.
So that he could test these psychiatric patients, just like he did with those 800 prisoners, right, at the Stateville Penitentiary. So he can inject these patients, these guinea pigs, with malaria so that they could come up with a vaccination that would treat malaria. This is evil, as we're talking about the synagogue of Satan being the architects of inversion. So it's interesting that there is a selected list of the book called A Selected List of Unethical Human Subjects. A selected list of unethical human subjects that was put out by City University of New York, they are a liberal university. So City University of New York put out a few years ago a manifesto detailing the crimes of Dr. Alf Alvin, the mentor of Dr. James E. Bowman, a selected list of unethical human subjects, also put out through Columbia University. Again, this is demonic. So then during the Nuremberg medical trials, right, after the advent of World War II, Nazi doctors had testified that they were following the exact same procedures that the state penitentiary in Joliet, Illinois was enacting through Dr. Alf Alvin, through this malaria study program that lasted for 29 years, that had exterminated 800 human beings. I don't care if they are a prisoner or a psychiatric patient. Every person is a human being. And none of these prisoners were given the full truth as to why they were being used by the mentor of Dr. James E. Bowman, Dr. Alf Alvin. 60 psychiatric patients at the Illinois State Hospital, according to the National Institutes of Health website, NIH.gov. The prisoner, they had injected malaria over 800 prisoners had received the virus of malaria without their consent. They were lied to by the warden, by the prison administrators, that either their sentences or their bits would be reduced or that they would be set free. They were used as guinea pigs, black, white, brown, and yellow men. Okay. And this is according to the 2010 article entitled Ethics Protocols. So then, according to ethics protocols in 2010, Dr. Alf Irving, along with Dr. James E. Bowman, are pronounced as eugenicists. So then Dr. Bowman, who was a member of the Association of Interns and Medical Students, which, according to the FBI, is a Communist front. They can find this on Judicial Watch during the 2015 op-ed that gives links to declassified FBI files. But yet Valerie Jarrett has never sued Judicial Watch. Why? Because what Judicial Watch had exposed is true. So then Valerie Jarrett, born on the 14th of November in 1956, born in Shiraz, Iran, during the Pahlavi dynasty, which its bloodline had produced the Mujahideen. So Valerie Jarrett's mother, we talked about her last week, Barbara Taylor, okay? In 1966, Barbara Taylor Bowman co-founded the Erickson Institute, named after the German psychoanalyst Erik Erikson. He never earned a PhD, Jason, but yet he called himself a psychoanalyst. So also on the board of the Erickson Institute in 1966 were people like Bernardine Dorn, whose real name is Dean Ornstein, capital Ohrnstein, including her husband, Bill Ayers, of the Weather Underground Network, where to the point, Jason, I believe they should be in prison
I
because
agree
they
with you,
wanted,
Bishop.
absolutely, they wanted to overthrow the United States of America, including the father of Bill Ayers, Tom Ayers, sat on the Erickson Institute board.
This
So
is a
the
fancy
mother,
building here in
yeah,
Chicago. It's all glass. What is this Erickson Institute? What are they doing there?
well, they are practitioners. They are proponents of child psychology.
Hmm.
Well, and just like Vipkin, as we talked about Kobe
Right.
Bryant's connection to this online children's initiative, it's a front for child manipulation, child psychology, and child psychiatry. So then the Erickson Institute is nothing more than a Trojan horse of mind control, mind manipulation, okay, including MK Ultra programs that is not called MK Ultra, but it's called parapsychology research. In other words, Jason, these are the same devils, but they come in different names as we're exposing the synagogue of Satan in the Erickson Institute. And mind you, as a side note, Eric Erickson was told by the FBI to sign an affidavit that Eric Erickson, would deny communism, and he did not. So as we're talking about the synagogue of Satan, now the mother of Valerie Jarrett, Barbara Taylor, her mother, which is the grandmother of Valerie Jarrett, Dorothy Taylor. Now, as we talked about her last week, she was an agent provocateur, okay, closely tied and worked for Planned Parenthood, which eventually changed its name in 1942. But in 1931, the foundation for Planned Parenthood was manifested through this 1939 Negro Project, okay, where Margaret Sanger, who spoke in 1926, 13 years prior to the enactment of the Negro Project, which is the final solution for African Americans, okay? So then in 1926, Margaret Sanger was invited by the Women's Auxiliary of the KKK in Silver Lake, New Jersey. And there's a picture of her on Google Images speaking at a KKK rally. But why are Black Americans supporting Planned Parenthood?
That's Margaret Sanger speaking at the KKK?
Yes, in Silver Lake, New Jersey in 1926. And you can just type in Margaret Sanger picture with KKK. It's there. Now, you're going to have a lot of people on the left, it's photoshopped. Wow. And again, to your powerful listeners, look at Hillary Clinton when she said, and I quote, that Margaret Sanger is her hero.
Wow.
Again, these people are killed. I don't care what color or ethnicity they are. Margaret Sanger still has a bust of her face at the Smithsonian. This is an abomination. And
now, wait a minute, Bishop. Someone is saying that, and they're presenting another photo of Margaret Sanger. They're saying that she's been photoshopped into this image.
Again, that's a lie. Again, Jason, Planned Parenthood has never denied, never in the history of their existence, that Margaret Sanger spoke in 1926, okay, for the KKK.
But it does appear that it's a doctored photo, Bishop, because this person is showing us the two source photos. I'm not denying that she spoke there, but I'm just cautious that we refer to evidence that's not been manipulated.
Yeah. And again, this is what the deep state does. They would try to Photoshop, manipulate photos to make it look like that not
she
only
didn't, right.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is what this is reverse in psychological engineering, as we're exposing the synagogue of Satan. And again, this is nothing personal against Margaret Sanger, but she's a killer. And why are African Americans, especially pastors, being connected to this Planned Parenthood, whose founder is a killer?
And let
Okay.
me add
And
one more thing, Bishop. Sorry, because this bolsters your argument. This article is saying that Sanger did, in fact, speak to the KKK, but as you point out, the photo is fake. So it would seem to be a piece of false evidence introduced by someone who wants to cast doubt on the fact
right.
that she spoke before the KKK. So that's good.
That's what they want. They want to plant a seed of doubt in the minds of Americans, especially Black Americans, that Margaret Sanger was a racist and a eugenicist. Again, they're in that 1939 manifesto, the Negro Project, which many Black organizations, right, the NAACP, SNCC, CORE, Urban League supported Margaret Sanger's creation of the 1939 manifesto, the Negro Project. Why? Because these devils were paid off. Even Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. in 1966, along with LBJ, received the Margaret Sanger Award. It makes no sense as we're talking about the synagogue of Satan being the architects of inversion. So then, what is the Negro Project? The Negro Project is a plan of extermination. Now, these devils can say all day long, well, Bishop, is not true, and contraceptives are going to help Black women. Why did Margaret Sanger target Black America? As early as 1916 in Brownsville, New York, going up to 1929 in 30 in Harlem. So you look at the Negro Project, it gets more ugly here now, Jason. There's a German doctor by the name of Dr. Ernst Rudin, who was Adolf Hitler's director of sterilization and the founder of the Nazi Society for Racial Hygiene. He helped craft the Negro Project along with a man by the name of Albert Lasker, capital Lasker. Albert Lasker's bloodline goes back to the Prussian, not Russian, Prussian Empire through his father Morris. Albert Lasker was a multi-millionaire who was the executor and the CEO of an advertising corporation called Lord and Thomas Advertising Agency, where Lord and Thomas was the first agency that had marketed Lucky Stripes. And most Black people, even to this day, most of them smoke Lucky Stripes. Again,
Really?
I'm not, yes,
I didn't
absolutely.
even realize that brand was still around.
Yeah, and especially in Chicago. And so when we're unpacking the synagogue of Satan being the architects of inversion, regardless of race, creed, or color, or ethnicity. So then this Negro Project was also supported by Dr. W.E.B. Du Bois, one of the founding fathers of the Boule Secret Society, in May 15th, 1904, in the hometown of Kobe Bean Bryant. So then all of these major players, including Clarence Gamble of the Procter & Gamble Company, had supported eugenics, the extermination. Now people are going to say, well, extermination is a harsh word. It's extermination. And so I'm going to expose some more stuff. It's going to be more uglier here today, Jason, as we are exposing the synagogue of Satan. So Albert Lasker, of Prussian descent, okay, contributed $20,000 to the Negro Project. Now, the Harlem Pastoral Alliance, right, which is an organization of pastors, which no longer exists, but back in 1929, the director of the Harlem Pastoral Alliance was a man by the name of Dr. Adam Clayton Powell Sr., whose son, Adam Clayton Powell Jr., became a congressman. So then Dr. Adam Clayton Powell Sr. of the Abyssinia Baptist Church was paid $500, including every African-American pastor in Harlem. Why? To allow Margaret Sanger to plant a eugenics clinic in Harlem, New York. These men were paid off. So you're telling me the life of a child, I don't care what color that child is, the life of a child is only worth $500? These are devils within the synagogue of Satan, regardless of race, creed, color, or ethnicity. So the Harlem Pastoral Alliance in 1929 allowed Margaret Sanger to speak on their pulpits. So the Birth Control Federation of America backed the Negro Project through Procter and Gamble, okay, Dr. Harvey Kellogg, right, Clarence Gamble, the family of E.H. Harriman, right, the railroad tycoon through his wife Mary. They were all backers, right, of eugenics, including Andrew Carnegie through the Carnegie Institute. So then Planned Parenthood.
All these guys have institutes, Bishop. I was surprised that Benjamin Crump has an institute. He's kind of like a nobody. He's a lawyer.
Right. Well, he is nobody. Now, it's going to be a lot of Black people are going to write you how, and they're going to call me names. I don't care. It's nothing personal. This man, Benjamin Crump, is all of the that. Okay, Trayvon Martin, the Ferguson riots, the Baltimore riots. Okay, as if there's no lawyers in those specific locations. So the deep state, they use these crab barrel attorneys who are at the bottom of the barrel, and they pay them off in order to manipulate the emotions of the masses of Black America. This is problem reactionary solution. So then this Planned Parenthood Federation of America, going back to 1960 in Brownsville, New York, going 13 years later to 1929, Harlem, New York. Now, 80% of clinics in America, these abortion clinics through Planned Parenthood, are in Black and Latino neighborhoods. That's not by accident, Jason, okay? 80% of these clinics, these killing machines, are in Black and Latino neighborhoods, people of color. So it's going to get ugly now. So as we're talking about exposing the synagogue of Satan, 1982, there was a scandal in Los Angeles, California, right? It was called the Los Angeles Fetus Disposal Scandal, where over 17,000 fetuses were found in a dumpster outside of the home of Marvin Weisberg in Woodland Hills, California. Marvin Weisberg was a former executive, one of the former executives of Planned Parenthood.
Holy cow.
Whose family supported the Negro Project going back to 1939.
Wow. Bishop, I've been to Woodland Hills. It was like very close to where I used to live in Los Angeles. It's a total like suburb neighborhood. 16,000 aborted fetuses there is like, what?
This is the Negro Project. So then, absolutely. So this Weisberg individual, Marvin Weisberg, was high up within Planned Parenthood. Okay, from 1976 to 1981, over 17,000 babies were found in a dumpster because Weisberg said he didn't have enough storage, okay, in the building of his medical analytical laboratories, okay? So Weisberg, who ran the medical analytical laboratories there in California, did not have enough room because of the thousands of more fetuses that were stuck in freezers at the medical and analytical laboratory there in Los Angeles. So then there was a woman who had testified, a social worker. Her name was Irma Praven, who had died right after she testified. Irma Praven, a former social worker, had said under oath, Jason, between 12 to 13,000 fetuses were Black. Now, I'm not making this a black and white thing. I'm not teaching victimhood. What I'm doing is exposing these devils in the synagogue of Satan because they are the architects of inversion.
It's very hard to find her on Google. How do I spell Irma Praven?
Capital E-R-M-A, capital P-R-A-V-I-N. You can also go to the FBI files as well. Irma Praven, a low-level social worker, had also called the FBI in Los Angeles. And now think about this, how horrific this is. 17,000 lives, 17,000 fetuses were put into a dumpster, okay, because the smell went out in the neighborhood. So according to Ms. Craven, 12 to 15,000 of those babies were Black. Now, according to the Wall Street Journal, going back to 2018, the Charlotte Lozier Institute, capital Lozier, the Charlotte Lozier Institute, okay, said that there are more Black children that are aborted here in New York City, more than those that are born. That makes no sense at all. Since 1973, Roe v. Wade, abortion, over 19 million Black babies. I don't care what color the baby is, a life is a life. But going back to 1973, over 19 million babies have been slaughtered or exterminated because of the policies in the Democratic Party in supplying millions of dollars, okay, to this Fourth Reich that I call Planned Parenthood. Over 19 million babies. Jason, that's 25% of the population that was lost to this day. It reduced Black America to over 25%. 19 exterminations since Roe v. Wade. But no one in the left is pronouncing that these people, Planned Parenthood, they're killers. These people are killers, as we're talking about the exposing the synagogue of Satan. Do you remember, Jason, as a side note, this African-American doctor in Philadelphia, Dr. Kermit Gosnell?
Kermit Gosnell?
Yes, Kermit, capital Kermit, Gosnell, capital Gosnell, who was indicted. Yes, 2013, because they found hundreds of fetuses in his office in Philadelphia. He was convicted of first-degree murder, of killing 3 infants who were born alive.
Wow.
He killed babies while they were born alive.
Wow.
Okay.
It also says on Wikipedia, Bishop, that he's convicted of involuntary manslaughter of 1 woman during the abortion procedure. So this guy is not too careful.
Yeah. And he was a proponent, okay, of eugenics as well. They use our people to destroy our own people, okay? As we're talking about exposing the synagogue as Satan being the architects of inversion. So then this Dr. Kermit Gosnell was also high up in the Philadelphia chapter of Planned Parenthood, who was also a proponent of the Negro Project. Now, Valerie Jarrett, her grandmother, Dorothy Taylor, knew Dr. Ernst Rudin, and Dr. Ernst Rudin was also the president of the International Federation of Eugenic Organizations, where Dr. Rudin, Dorothy Taylor, Albert Lasker, okay, including Margaret Sanger, helped craft and write the 1939 Negro Project, as we're exposing, I believe, the greatest global cover-up in human history besides COVID-19, the synagogue of Satan being the architects of inversion. So Valerie Jarrett's grandfather, the wife of her grandmother, Dorothy Taylor, was a man by the name of Robert Rashawn Taylor. We talked about him last week. He was the director of Chicago's Housing Authority under one of the most racist mayors in American history, Mayor Richard J. Daley. So then Mayor Richard J. Daley, after in enacting the 1964 Great Society, the New Deal, through Lyndon Baines Johnson, a racist. And Lyndon Baines Johnson said, I'm going to keep this clean. I'm going to keep these ends in the Democratic machine for 200 years. It's working. So then the Robert Taylor homes, named after the grandfather of Valerie June Jarrett, began to build, I believe, Jason, the biggest American ghetto plantation in American history on Chicago's South Side from 1961. And I believe the last building was torn down in the mid-2000s, around 2005, 2006. Okay. So then, during the dedication, and I'm talking about the synagogue of Satan being the architects of inversion, at this dedication, of this American ghetto plantation, named after the grandfather of Valerie Jarrett. The family of Robert Taylor was not even allowed at the ribbon cutting ceremony. The building, the complex that was named after the grandfather of Valerie June Jarrett. So then Robert Rashawn Taylor, the grandfather, who was also a 33rd degree Mason, a Black Prince Hall Mason, and as a side note, all Black men and women in the Boule Secret Society are Prince Hall Masons. And if they say they are not, they're lying, Jason.
What does that mean, Prince Hall Mason?
Prince Hall was an African Barbadian, born in Barbados, but immigrated to Boston, Massachusetts in the 1800s. Now, it's interesting about Prince Hall. The Prince Hall Masonic system was designed by an African Barbadian, a Caribbean man by the name of Prince Hall, because Black men and women were prohibited, okay? Going back, and this goes back to the mid to the late 1800s, in 1784. So Black people were prohibited of joining many of the Masonic lodges in the United States. So Prince Hall had created the first African-centric or Black Masonic order. So most of your Black entertainers are Black Prince Hall Masons. I put up a posting some nights ago on Facebook concerning Benjamin Crump being a Boule and Benjamin Crump being a member of a lodge in Tallahassee, Florida, called the Michael R. Moore Lodge, okay? But the name has changed now. But Michael R. Moore is a ordained pastor in the Church of God in Christ. So according to what came out of the mouth of Benjamin Crump, not out of the mouth of the bishop, on Benjamin Crump's website, the Benjamin Crump Institute, third paragraph down, fifth sentence, that he is a member of not only Sigma Pi Phi Boule, but he was also a member of the Michael R. Moore Lodge, right? Of free and accepted Masons. Michael R. Moore was worshipped, okay, within that lodge. Wait a minute now. But he's supposed to be a minister of the gospel of Jesus Christ. It's all demonic, my friend, as we're connecting these political ley lines concerning the synagogue of Satan.
Just a couple quick things, Bishop. I'm trying to get to Benjamin Crump's About Us webpage where, I mean, even searching on Google right here, the sentence that it gives me says that he is a member of Sigma Pi Phi Boule. Oh, the computer is totally crashed is what the problem is. Sorry, Bishop. Wow. Carry on and I'll address that. We won't have images in the background for a moment.
Wow. And you know what? And that's probably not by accident. So then, Benjamin Crump, okay, is a Prince Hall Mason. He is an attorney out of Florida. He had represented the family of Trayvon Martin, right? Is now representing the jogger, Ahmaud Arbery, right? The jogger that was shot by a white father and his son. So then, as we're exposing the synagogue, and again, to your listeners, go to Benjamin Crump's website, the Benjamin Crump Institute. I did not get this information from a conspiracy website or from another link. This came out of the mouth of Benjamin Crump.
Right.
He is Prince Hall Mason. Go right ahead, Jason.
No, I was just saying that's exactly right. And it's interesting that in trying to access that information, the whole computer shut down. Probably just a coincidence.
Absolutely. Nothing's by accident as we're talking about the synagogue of Satan. So now it's interesting that the great-grandfather, I'm going back even further, the father of her grandfather, Robert Rashawn Taylor's father, right, was a man by the name of Robert Robinson Taylor, who was an architect and the first Black person to enter MIT, the Massachusetts Institute of Technology. Really? And the great-grandfather of Valerie Jarrett, Robert Robinson Taylor, had constructed the present-day Tuskegee University. Remember the Tuskegee syphilis conspiracy? Yeah. Go right ahead.
No, I'm just remarking at what you're saying, Bishop. This is all, it's always fascinating.
It is so fascinating. So this Robert Robinson Taylor had contributed thousands of dollars for the Tuskegee Institute of Syphilis. This is the great grandfather of Valerie June Sherrod, who was
But there's that
also
institute again, Bishop. What exactly is an institute? I mean, is this just some word these guys add to whatever office they're opening to make it sound more official?
they make it sound more official, but also they get more governmental grant money if they're an institute compared to a community college, a college or a university. It depends on the state because every state is autonomous as far as their Department of Education. But that's interesting because you and I had talked about this individual by the name of Julius Rosenwald, right? Who was the founder of the Sears Roebuck Company. Julius Rosenwald gave a $50,000 check, all right, to the Tuskegee University, to the Tuskegee Institute, to begin the Black extermination. I have to call it like it is, of Black America by hiring doctors to take part of this Tuskegee experiment to inject 600 men and women with syphilis to see how the body would react, just like Dr. Alvin Alving did that back in the 40s and 50s, okay, at the state penitentiary, the Stateville Penitentiary in Joliet, Illinois. These are the architects of not only evil, but inversion. Julius Rosenwald built 5,000 Black schools in the South called the Rosenwald School. He gave another $250,000, right, to the University of Chicago to create a department of eugenics, which later Dr. Bowman was the director of the pathology in medicine and eugenics at the University of Chicago, okay, including the Stepanovich Institute on the formation of knowledge. So in order to expose this conspiracy, we have to follow the money, as we're talking about the greatest global cover-up in human history, which is the synagogue of Satan being, of course, the architects of inversion.
But so Bishop, let me ask you briefly, is calling something the Institute for the Formation of Knowledge not the stupidest sounding thing you've ever heard?
It makes no sense. And again, these are front names that the deep state has been creating and enacting for hundreds of years. They use these front names to make it more legit, okay? To make it more legit, like the Prisco School of Pathology and Medicine, right? Or the Department of Genetics and African American Studies, not eugenics, okay? But genetics, or the section of genetic medicine at the University of Chicago. These are front names, and because they think you and I are stupid and that we're not going to dig. And as a side note, John D. Rockefeller had created the University of Chicago, same school that Barack Obama taught law in. So
I have to add briefly, Bishop, that, I know you and I have spoken about this person, but she came up this morning, this doctor that was so prominently featured in the New York Times multimedia presentation that kicked off this public debate about the lack of ventilators in New York is Dr. Colleen Smith, who, guess what, studied at the University of Chicago.
What, Jason, again, I'm beating a dead horse, but man, you are teaching me as well. And you're hitting great nerves in me as we're talking about the synagogue of Satan being the architects of inversion. Dr. Colleen Smith is, to me, a eugenicist. Why? Because what gave her the right to go into the ER of that hospital in Queens to film these COVID-19 patients? She's a part of Crimson Contagion that you and I had talked about that was enacted by the Department of Homeland Security through the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services from January to August of 2019. Excellent point there, Jason. As we're talking about, she is of the synagogue of Satan as well. So then where did Planned Parenthood get their money? Not just from the Procter & Gamble company, not only from the Priskers, but also Planned Parenthood received $100,000 from John D. Rockefeller through his best friend, Julius Rosenwald, who gave that money to a man that Margaret Sanger was sleeping with, Cecil B. DeMille. So Margaret Sanger, who is supposed to be the symbol of purity and of a great reputation, was sleeping with Cecil B. DeMille and H.G. Wells. And then DeMille gave that check, okay, to Margaret Sanger. Why not just give it directly to Margaret Sanger? Because these devils work in what I call the compartmentalization of darkness. They are layered, Jason. So in order to get to the origin, who is the synagogue of Satan, being the architects of inversion, we have to unlayer each layer in this global conspiracy. So in the 1932 edition of the Birth Control Review, including the Margaret Sanger papers at New York University, all right, it talks about Margaret Sanger had received $100,000 from John D. Rockefeller through Julius Rosenwald, through her boyfriend, Cecil B. DeMille, that created the first Black clinic in American history in 1929 in Harlem, New York, on the corner of 125th and Lenox. So then you had asked me last week, who was Vernon Jarrett? Well, Vernon Jarrett was the father-in-law of Valerie June Jarrett. Vernon Jarrett was a high-level communist in the Communist Party of USA, who was very connected to Frank Marshall Davis. So then Vernon Jarrett, who died in 2004, was one of the principal writers for the Chicago Defender. Every Black newspaper, when you go back to their origins, Jason, they're all communistic, or they were supplied with communistic money. As far as the civil rights movement from 1955 to 1968, the entire structure, Jason, of the civil rights movement was subsidized and paid with communist money, okay, through the Southern Poverty Law Center in the South. That's a communist front, okay? The NAACP, SNCC, CORE, the Urban League, okay, the Southern Christian Leadership Conference, all ran and were sustained with communist money between 1955 to 1968. So the son of Vernon Jarrett, Dr. William Jarrett, had married Valerie Bowman. So then Dr. Jarrett, who is the son of Vernon Jarrett, Dr. William Jarrett, died in 1993, okay? Now in 1948, Vernon Jarrett, along with a man by the name of Frank Marshall Davis, who was one of Barack Obama's mentors. Frank Marshall Davis died in Hawaii. I'll come up to that in a few minutes. So Frank Marshall Davis, along with Vernon Jarrett, sat on a committee of the Aid Packing House Committee, representing not just steel workers, but workers within the meat packing district of Chicago, all subsidized with communist money, okay? So there's a book called Black Bolsheviks by Dr. Harry Haywood. Black Bolshevik. It talks about, Dr. Haywood says that Vernon Jarrett, Frank Marshall Davis, Barbara Taylor, the mother of Valerie June Jarrett, Dorothy Taylor, the grandmother of Valerie June Jarrett, also sat on the executive board of the Communist Party USA, along with Langston Hughes, a famous African-American writer, and Paul Robeson. These
Bishop,
were communists.
the book is $750, this Black Bolshevik book.
You see, and this is, again, we talked about remember some weeks ago, we talked about the book by Dr. Charles, what's his name? Yeah, Dr. Charles. He talks about the history of Sigma Pi Phi, okay? Charles Wesley. So people have been asking me, and it's interesting that you should bring up that price. People have been emailing me ever since that I had exposed the book by Dr. Charles Wesley, the History of Sigma Pi Phi. Why would these books of truth be so expensive? But you get a little magazine, Keep Up with the Kardashians, $1.75. This is how the deep state does, Jason, as we're talking about the synagogue of Satan. Then I did not know it was worth that much money concerning Black Bolshevik. So then all of these players, Barbara Taylor, Dorothy Taylor, right? Vernon Jarrett, Frank Marshall Davis, Paul Robeson, Langston Hughes, sat on the executive board, right? Representing Black communists here in America, going back to the 30s and 40s of the Communist Party USA. So then the song that the leaders within the civil rights movement from 1955 to 1968, This song, We Shall Overcome. Guess where that song came from, Jason? It came from an African-American minister by the name of Dr. Charles Albert Tindley, going back to the year of 1900. Dr. Tindley used to travel to the Soviet Union, okay? He used to travel to the Soviet Union. And so this song, We Shall Overcome, did not originate here in America. It came out of the Soviet Union. It is one of the principal songs that Joseph Stalin, okay, Leon Trotsky, and Lenin had created. But Black people have adopted We Shall, and it's going to be Black people is going to write you, oh, the bishop is lying, oh, he's straight. This is the reason why Black people are on a plantational type of thinking. Not all, but a great proportion. So We Shall Overcome, okay?
But Bishop, what was Tindley doing there in the Soviet Union?
A lot of African-American ministers, okay, like Dr. Tindley, they were so attracted by the doctrine of communism, of unity, okay, no rich power being over them. Many African-Americans were manipulated of joining the Communist Party USA. The Soviets didn't care about Black people, but they were using Black people, including the civil rights movement and Dr. Tindley, to infiltrate America by infiltrating the civil rights movement and every Black church in America as a Trojan horse. So in the book Black Bolshevik by Dr. Harry Haywood, he talks about Langston Hughes, Paul Robeson, Valerie Jarrett's mother, Barbara Jarrett, and Dorothy Jarrett, the mother of Barbara Jarrett, who is the grandmother of Valerie Jarrett. As a part of the Black Communist Front, being a part of the Communist Party USA, We Shall Overcome is really not an American song. Its origin is within the Soviet Union, just like Black liberation theology, right? That Barack Obama's former pastor, Dr. Jeremiah Wright, right? The former pastor of that church on Chicago South Side, the Trinity United Church of Christ. Black liberation theology is rooted in the KGB. Black liberation theology has its roots in Latin American liberation theology, going back to the 1940s, which Latin American liberation theology has its roots in the Soviet Union, because many of the Jesuit Latino priests used to travel to the Soviet Union during the 40s and 50s. So Black liberation theology, whether it's Black liberation theology or any other type of ethnicity, as far as using the gospel of Jesus Christ as a tool of self-victimhood. So Black liberation theology is not of God. That's another topic for another day. So We Shall Overcome came up out of the Soviet Union. I know this is shocking.
Quick. It is shocking, Bishop, but real quick, I'm just finding some, I guess, 1960s kind of posters, political ads and things like that, talking about vote communist. And it shows this guy, WMZ Foster, running for president, and James Ford running for president. But they're saying equal rights for Negroes everywhere, self-determination for the Black Belt. And it shows the South, and it says, vote communist.
Okay, and Jason, the Communist Party has no interest in Black America or Black people. They were using Black America, okay, just like Saul Alinsky, using Black Americans as a tool of manipulation in order to divide and conquer America. Remember, Israel Cohen, we talked about him last week, right? Of the Fabian Society. He wrote that manifesto in the 50s, a racial program for the 20th century. It's happening today. So the USSR, the Soviet Union, through Trotsky, through Lenin, okay, and through Stalin, had used the mental psyop and the pain of Black America as a tool of manipulation. And this is what they do, Jason. They use and so you have to deep say they use our pain as a tool of manipulation that will garner a reactionary move from Black people in order to divide and conquer this country. As we're talking about, these are the devils in the synagogue of Satan. Excellent newspaper article there, Jason. Go right
And
ahead.
one more point, Bishop. I mean, I've been to certain countries in the former Soviet Union, and my observation is that there's actually a surprising amount of racism against Black people. I think primarily because there's virtually no Black people living in Russia. I just looked it up real quick here, and according to Wikipedia, they have an article here about Afro-Russians. They're estimating between 50 to 100,000 Russians of African descent. This is out of a total population of 144.5 million. That's an incredibly small minority. I imagine it's quite unusual to be Black and living in Russia.
Isn't that interesting? But it backs up what you and I have been talking about for the past 10 to 15 minutes. The Soviet Union has no interest in liberating Black people. Okay.
No.
So they give Black people what they're accustomed to, a theology that is based on victimhood, right? I'm a victim. Someone owes me something. Newsflash, Black American, nobody owes us anything. Okay. As we're talking about the synagogue of Satan. So many of these Black writers in history and actors, Langston Hughes and Paul Robeson, including Dr. James E. Bowman and Dorothy Bowman and Barbara Bowman, all were a part of the Communist Party USA. And We Shall Overcome did not originate out of the United States of America. The entire civil rights movement was a Trojan horse used and manipulated by the Russians in order to weaken the political structure of our country, Jason.
Wow.
And so when you look at the past of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., okay, when Dr. King won the Nobel Peace Prize, one of the Rothschilds was there. You can look it up on Google Images. And so they used Dr. King as a pawn, the Soviets did, in order to perpetuate their political and communistical power. But Dr. King didn't know that. There you go, right there. One of the Rothschilds. So the Dr. King didn't know that until the end. So then there's an attorney, Jason. This gets really, really deep now. As we're unpacking slowly for your powerful listeners, the synagogue of Satan, the architects of inversion. Frank Marshall Davis was closely tied to an attorney by the name of Samuel Leibowitz, capital Leibowitz. Since Frank Marshall Davis, who had infiltrated a lot of communist organizations, but at the same time, he was a member of the NAACP, the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People. So Frank Marshall Davis was tied to Samuel Leibowitz. Now, to your listeners, if you know the study of the criminal case of the Scottsboro boys, right, going back to 1931, where 9 Black teenagers from ages from 13 to 19 were accused of raping 2 white women on a train in 1931 in the state of Alabama. So then the NAACP, in conjunction with the Communist Party USA, had hired Samuel Leibowitz, who was born in the same geographical location, not the same city, but the same geographical location as one of the founders of the NAACP, Henry Moskowitz. We talked about him last year. So both Samuel Leibowitz and Henry Moskowitz, okay, are Romanian Khazarians. So Samuel Leibowitz defended the 9 Black teenagers during the Scottsboro case. Major national and international news. But who had paid for the legal representation of these children? Communist money through the Communist Party USA, which was funded out of Moscow. These are the architects, Jason, of inversion. So then the Communist Party USA, who had also backed the creation of the Negro Project. So then again, as we go back here quickly, man, this is some powerful stuff. As we're talking about the greatest, I believe, the greatest global cover-up in human history, including COVID-19, as we're exposing the synagogue of Satan being the architects of inversion. So Barack Obama is tied to Vernon Jarrett, but also Obama and Vernon Jarrett were tied to a man by the name of Dr. Khalid al-Mansour. Dr. Khalid, capital Khalid, Al Mansour, capital Mansour, whose real name is Donald Worden. So Donald Worden, or Khalid al-Mansour, Donald Worden contributed hundreds of thousands of dollars to the original Black Panther Party. Donald Worden, who had changed his name from Don or Donald Worden to Khalid al-Mansour, was a mentor of the late Huey Newton, one of the founding fathers of the Black Panther Party.
Wow.
Yeah, so then the Black Panther Party also got their money from the leadership, from Mao Zedong out of China. So the Black Panther Party for self-defense, Huey Newton, was connected to not only this Dr. Mansour, this Dr. Khalid Mansour, who's connected to Vernon Jarrett, who is connected to Barack Hussein Obama. Again, these are connections as we're talking about the Synagogue of Satan. Remember that 1979 article, Will Arabs Back Ties to Blacks with Cash? Again, where Arabs back ties to blacks with cash. It says that not only Barack Obama was supplied with Saudi Arabian money, but many Black politicians to this day are subsidized, and backed by the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. Why? Because the Saudis, just like the Soviets, they want to manipulate the political structure of our country.
But we should remind our viewers this article was written by Vernon Jarrett.
By Vernon Jarrett. This article was not written by any other African-American person or any other American. It came out of the mouth of a 33rd degree Black Prince Hall Mason, And so this connection between Obama, Vernon Jarrett, and Frank Marshall Davis, a lot of people think that the father of Barack Obama is Frank Marshall Davis, and Dr. Khalid al-Mansour.
There's another important connection, Bishop. We've been hearing a lot about this House Resolution 6666, the Trace Act, where this is about the contact tracers and everything. This was introduced by Bobby Rush, who is a congressional representative for, I think, Illinois' 1st district. He's the only politician to ever defeat Barack Obama in an election, and he's the co-founder of the Illinois chapter of the Black Panther Party.
He's a former Black Panther.
Yeah.
Just like I said on last week, this man is not only a Prince Hall Mason at 33rd degree level, he's also a former Black Panther,
I say current.
And also current, that I did not know.
I mean, that's my opinion. That's my opinion.
You know what? There's a new Black Panther Party, and that's another topic for another day, where this Dr. Khalid Muhammad of the new Black Panther Party was taken out because they're saying, just as a side note, there's a particular attorney or lawyer within the new Black Panther Party was actually a present-day COINTELPRO agent representing the FBI who actually took out Khalid Muhammad. That maybe we can talk about that on next week. But this Bobby Rush, who is trying to push this HR 6666 down into the throats of Americans, he is still a Black Panther, even though he's an American Black Panther on an American congressman, but he has a communist Maoist psychology, where they want to keep Black people in a subservient state of servitude so that they can control not just Black America, but America. These are the architects of not just inversion, but division, what I call weapons of mass division. So then we talked about this attorney some months ago, Percy Sutton. Now, Percy Sutton, who was a Boule, was also the attorney for the late Malcolm X. So Percy Sutton had introduced Barack Obama to Vernon Jarrett. Percy Sutton, who was the attorney for the late Malcolm X and Dr. Betty Shabazz, was heavily connected to Obama, to Vernon Jarrett, okay, and also to Dr. Khalid al-Mansour or Don Warden. These are Black communists, Maoists. They do not love the United States of America. And again, I'm going to get a lot of hits from people. I do not care, because my job is not to placate people because of the color of their skin. My assignment here today, Jason, is to expose through great detail and meticulous research the synagogue of Satan being the architects of inversion. So then, remember the creation of the NAACP was created by Henry Moskowitz, who absolutely had known Samuel Leibowitz was the attorney who legally represented those 9 African-American teenagers in 1931 of the Scottsboro case. It's all with communist money. So just Henry Moskowitz, along with the Spingarn brothers of Joel and Arthur B. Spingarn, created the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People. There's nothing wrong with that. The problem I have is that people in the higher up echelons of the NAACP, CORE, the Congress of Racial Equality, SNCC, the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, in the Urban League, they're lying when they say that they control their organization, and they do not. Okay, so the Spingarn brothers, along with Henry Moskowitz, had controlled the NAACP, and still there are forces that don't look like myself who are still in control of the NAACP.
Well, Bishop, isn't the fact that they include the word colored people, I mean, isn't that such an antiquated, stupid term that no Black person uses?
And you know what, Jason, you hit this right on the nail as we're talking about these architects of inversion. Black people, Black America, I'm going to say something, they will not agree with this, but I have to propagate the truth. Black America is the only group of people on this planet we don't know who we are. We know what we are, but we don't know who we are. So we go from Negro, okay, Afro-American, colored, okay, African-American. We're all over the spiritual and the emotional map because we don't know who we are. And so you got companies like the Nike Corporation, half of their sales, as a side note, from Nike in 2019, the gross domestic product was from the sales of Black Americans, that they would rather pay $300, $400, $600 for a pair of Air Jordans than to pay their rent or their mortgage. Not all Black people, but a great percentage. Why? Because they're slaves. They are a part of the mental psyop of the synagogue of Satan. Now, as a side note, the nephew of the Spingarn brothers was a man by the name of Stephen J. Spingarn, right, who was also a backer of the Negro Project. These are connections here who are a part of this global eugenics conspiracy. So the NAACP, the Urban League, CORE, SNCC, including Dr. W.E.B. Du Bois, Dorothy Taylor, were all complicit in the 1939 manifesto of the Negro Project, which is located in the 1939 papers of Mary Lasker, the Mary Lasker papers, the wife of Albert Lasker, who gave a $20,000 check to create a manifesto, okay, of the extermination of Black Americans. I know people don't like those words, but we have to call those things which be not as though they were. Guess who else supported the Negro Project? The family of Aaron Sinsheimer, the family. Now, Aaron Sinsheimer had owned a restaurant, okay, going back, and this is going back to the 1800s, but his progenitors, his bloodline, not so much him because he died way before the 1939 Negro Project, but the family bloodline of Aaron Sinsheimer, capital Sinsheimer, his restaurant was the headquarters of the creation of B'nai B'rith of the Anti-Defamation League. They're doing great work. I have no problem with B'nai B'rith. I have no problem with it. But his generations, his bloodline, okay? This is according to the book Black Bolshevik, okay, in chapter 5, that the bloodline, the family of Aaron Sinsheimer, who is one of the founding fathers of B'nai B'rith of the Anti-Defamation League, were ardent supporters of the 1939 manifesto, the Negro Project. Again, I'm not castigating B'nai B'rith, okay? But what I'm saying, I'm just connecting these dots, these people who were in and around the life of Margaret Sanger. So then remember the Comstock laws. The Comstock laws came out in the 1920s that the US government said that it was against the law for any American, including Margaret Sanger, to distribute pamphlets that were corrupted in its nature, that would show naked people. That was a part of the Comstock laws in the 1920s, where Margaret Sanger went to jail for a while because she bucked or went against the Comstock laws enacted by the U.S. government in the 1920s.
Was that Comstock laws, Bishop? I can't.
Yeah, I said Comstock.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. So the Comstock laws. Now I'm getting some emails and people are saying, "Well, Bishop, should we bring back the Comstock laws?" I think so. I agree because
FX2PY says B'nai B'rith is a Jewish demi-Masonic lodge. I don't know about that.
Say that again, Jason.
We've got a person who is commenting here, FX2PY, which I don't know who that person is, says B'nai B'rith is a Jewish demi-Masonic lodge. I've never been into a B'nai B'rith. I can't say if it is or isn't.
You know, in its beginning, B'nai B'rith was a secret society. It was a lodge in their inception. I don't know if they are now. They'll probably say no, but the executives like Abraham Foxman and people like that who are doing great work, I don't have a problem with them. But they began as a secret society in a lodge, just like the history of the Red Cross. The Red Cross began as a secret society. It did. That's another topic for another day, including the Salvation Army. Okay, the Salvation Army started as a secret society, but there was an attorney, Jason, according to the comprehensive history of the KKK from 1865 to 1877, an attorney by the name of Simon Wolfe, who was a part, right, of the Virginia State chapter of B'nai B'rith, was responsible indirectly for the assassination of Abraham Lincoln. And I really don't want to get into that today because I want to concentrate on the synagogue as Satan being the architects of evil. So again, they do great work. I am not bashing them, okay? I'm pro-Israel. I'm just pulling back the layers, Jason, through what I call these compartmentalization layers of darkness of these power players who supported the extermination of a people whom they deemed to be feeble-minded. Okay, so in my conclusion, now remember the book, The Communists, okay? There's a book called The Communists that talks about the bloodline of Aaron Sinsheimer. Many years after his death, they had supported the 1939 manifesto, the Negro Project. And we're not talking about the Jewish people. We are talking about certain people who are perpetuating Judaism or trying to perpetuate as Jews, but they are not, okay? So then the book, The Communist, talks about these power players who supported this Negro Project manifesto. So Frank Marshall Davis The Untold Story of Barack Obama's Mentor. Again, the book Frank Marshall Davis, The Untold Story of Barack Obama's Mentor. Okay. Now it talks about President Obama's book, Dreams from My Father. Now, in the actual paper print book, the name Frank Marshall Davis is in the paperback version or the hardback version, right, of Dreams of My Father. But in the audio version, Jason, of Dreams of My Father, the name of Frank Marshall Davis has been removed. Why? So then Barack Obama is tied, okay, to communist money, tied not just to the Saudis through Vernon Jarrett, but also through this Dr. Khalid al-Mansour or Don Warden to the Black Panther Party. So and also he's tied to Bernardine Dorn, the Weather Underground Network with Bill Ayers. So Barack Obama is the worst president that we've ever had in our lifetime. Black people were sold a lemon because the deep state said, well, here's your black man. Okay, Barack Obama is not really black. Barack Obama becomes black when it is politically expedient for him to be black. Yeah. And so then in my conclusion, so then Frank Marshall Davis, his name is extracted from the audio version of Dreams of My Father. So you got Vernon Jarrett, Frank Marshall Davis, okay, Don Warden, AKA, okay, Dr. Khalid Mansour. And it also says in the book, the communists, and not just the communists, but also a deconstruction of the life of Barack Obama, that Frank Marshall Davis knew Alger Hiss. Wait a minute, I'm confused. So Alger Hiss was a spy representing the Soviets, and giving the Soviets information concerning both the atom bomb and the hydrogen bomb, just like the Rosenbergs. They're all complicit. So Frank Marshall Davis knew Alger Hiss, knew the Hollywood 10, knew Ethel Rosenberg and her husband, and knew Lillian Hellman. These are doubles, a part of the synagogue of Satan, okay? They're communists, they're socialists. I don't care what color they are. They have been the architects, Jason, of inversion and deception. You was getting ready to say something.
No, I was just saying that, all these connections are quite astounding. There was something that I had back here, but please carry on, Bishop. You're connecting so many things.
Oh, this is so powerful here as we're talking about, exposing the synagogue as Satan being the architects of inversion. Now, I want to say something concerning Uncle Joe, sleepy, cripping, sniffing Biden, who can't remember his left foot from his right hand. Joe Biden is not a friend of Black America. When Joe Biden was the senator of the state of Delaware, okay, back in 1974, Uncle Joe supported a bill entitled Separate but Equal, okay? In other words, separate but equal, okay? So then it was a policy that Senator Biden had said on NPR a few years ago that was a policy of segregation. He said that segregation was a matter of Black pride. Wait a minute, wait. He said, Uncle Joe said, that segregation was a matter of Black pride, okay? And that Biden is opposed to racial integration, okay? So then Joe Biden is a segregationist, wrapped up in the cloth of loving Black people. In 1994, Joe sleepy, creeping, sniffing Biden was also the author of the Violent Crime Control and Law Enforcement Act in 1994, which was pronounced as the new Jim Crow bill. So because of Joe Biden's 1994 Violent Crime Control and Law Enforcement Act, okay, along with Bill Clinton's 3 Strikes and You're Out, this incarcerated 2.5 million.
Oh, Bishop? Now our other thing crashed there. Let me see if I can get you back here, Bishop. Sorry, you probably can't hear me right now.
Doesn't love us. Joe Biden doesn't love anyone but Joe Biden. Joe Biden, through this Violent Crime Control and Law Enforcement Act, the new Jim Crow bill, where he, along with Bill Clinton, through three strikes and you're out, was responsible, Jason, for the containment and the incarceration of 2.5 million black men to this day, which is 1/10 of the black male population, okay? As we're exposing the synagogue of Satan being the architects of inversion. In my conclusion, so then, in this bill, this 1994 bill that Joe Biden had enacted into law, the Violent Crime Control and Law Enforcement Act, which is the new Jim Crow, okay, where 2.5 million black men have been incarcerated, which is 1/10 of the black male population in this country. Now, I'm not teaching victimhood. I'm not teaching black and white, white and black. What I'm doing is exposing the psyop piece by piece, section by section, layer by layer, not just of Joe Biden, but the entire Democratic Party, being the synagogue of Satan, the architects of evil. So in other words, 100-to-1 sentencing. There's a 100-to-1 sentencing disparity between those who have been arrested for crack cocaine versus those who have been arrested for powder cocaine. Crack cocaine is not the original base of powder cocaine. So black men, black women were sent to prison for 20, 25, 30 years on crack, okay? But those other Americans who were non-black, who had been arrested for trafficking of powder cocaine, which at its substance should have pushed these people. Are you still hearing me now, Jason?
Yes.
Yes.
Sorry, Bishop. Oh, wait. Oh, Bishop. Do I still have you there?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, good.
Okay.
Good. We had a crash, but I've got you back. Carry on, please.
Absolutely. So in my conclusion, in this 1994 bill that Joe Sneepy, Crippen, and Sniffin Biden, Uncle Sleepy Joe, had authored this policy with the backing of the Clinton administration, the Violent Crime Control and Law Enforcement Act, the new Jim Crow bill that incarcerated 2.5 million black men. 1/10 of the black male population was infected because of Joe Biden. That was a 100-to-1 sentencing disparity between those who were arrested for crack and those who really are not sent to prisons for long prison sentences if they have cocaine. This was a racist tactic by the Democratic Party.
Well, it's also ironic because Bill Clinton was so involved with cocaine dealing, selling, using. His brother was arrested by the FBI for buying a suitcase filled with cocaine, but yet he was passing laws to throw people in jail for cocaine.
See, and again, there are two separate laws for the has and for the have not. Hillary Clinton should be in prison right now for 33,000 emails, okay? And I believe Trump, he's got to go after her. People like her and Joe Biden.
But Bishop, yesterday we had William Barr saying he felt it was unlikely that the John Durham investigation would lead to any questioning of Barack Obama or Joe Biden. So that doesn't really sound too good to me.
No, it doesn't. Because, see, Jason, they all have something on each other. This is the disparity, what I call the disparity, the level of the swamp. And I don't think that President Trump knew the depth of the swamp until he became president, okay? Because if Joe Biden becomes president, we're going to be in World War III. I'm telling you, if Joe Biden gets up and speaks to the nation and can't remember his first, I'm telling you, and especially if Joe Biden chooses Hillary Clinton, Joe Biden would be dead in 1 year.
Yeah, 1 day, more like it.
He will be archon-cited, okay? And so this is my conclusion of Volume 3 of the Synagogue of Satan being the architects of inversion, because getting back to the origin of the family bloodline of Valerine June Jarrett, her mother, grandmother, grandfather, great grandfather. Okay. All of these connections, like a snake, in and around the life of Barack Hussein Obama, Vernon Jarrett, okay, Frank Marshall Davis, Al Masura, okay, Khalid Al Masur or Donald Walden, the Black Panther Party, Black Liberation Theology, Latino Liberation Theology, all a part of the Chicago's Down Low Club that you and I talked about last summer.
Yeah.
These are the architects of inversion. Absolutely.
Bishop, another amazing presentation. I know everybody is always blown away by the things that you raise. I definitely want to explore this Barack Obama tie to Saudi Arabia, because
Yes.
it links to so many of the things that have happened: 9/11, the Las Vegas shooting, this naval air base shooting. They now have just come out with new information that guy had some communication with Al Qaeda. I mean, again, I think even this term Al Qaeda seems a little bit like something that was made up by the news in the United States as kind of a general brand for anybody who is a, jihadi type, mujahideen kind of, they always seem to be switching that. It's the mujahideen, it's Al Qaeda, it's ISIS, it's Daesh or whatever it is. They always have different names for it, but it seems to be the boogeyman that they're always just presenting to us. And these ties to the University of Chicago, Bill Ayers, Bernardine Dorn, they're still around. And they said they were going to infiltrate the schools and take over. And now we see all these universities, and now Bill Gates talking with Andrew Cuomo about redesigning education in New York. Why do we need that because of a virus?
You see, this is a Chinese psyop, okay? Just like climate control is a Chinese hoax. There is a conservative effort in other words, I'm going to say something, Jason. This is a new phrase that God gave to me personally. When COVID-19 was launched, unleashed upon the world, that began a brand new Cold War arms race, not through the weapons of mass biological destruction through hydrogen and atom bombs, but now there's a new Cold War arms race through the global vaccination industrial complex, where you got hundreds, if not thousands, of pharmaceutical companies around the world vying to create a vaccine to inject into the arms of American people and around the world, aka through the spirit and the psyop of this Dr. Alf Alvey, the mentor of the father of Valley June Jarrett, Dr. James E. Bowman. We are witnessing the advent in the birth of a new arms race, but now this time it's through the Novartis AG Group and GlaxoSmithKline in the Pirbright Institute and Johnson & Johnson in the Pfizer Pharmaceutical Corporation, through the Wuhan Institute of Biotechnology, the Wuhan Institute of Virology, through the Wuji Pharma Aptech Institute. All of these devils have now become willing participants, right, in a brand new Cold War arms race. Now it's through the global vaccination industrial complex. But it's not going to work on Americans, because I believe Americans, they're going to take up arms. There's no way that they're going to allow any government agent to come into their home, HR 6666, and to force them to get tested, okay? And if you're tested positive, they can throw you in a FEMA camp. I know what's coming, but it's not going to work, as we just so powerfully articulated the last hour and 30 minutes. This synagogue of Satan. There are people who are trying to be Jews, but they're not. They are not the state of Israel. But you got those Khazarians of the Khazarian mafia, okay? And getting back, I've been getting a lot of messages, Jason, from people, even in the Jewish community, through social media and email, that they had no idea that pedophilia was supported in the Talmud. These are young Jewish. They had no idea that a priest can marry a girl or a boy if they're 3 years old or older, and that's in the Sanhedrin chapter 55, verse letter B, in the Talmud, in those 20 volumes of the Talmud. These are the architects of inversion here today. And next week, Jason, we're going to get into the connections between Barack Obama and the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. Absolutely.
Yeah, that'll be very interesting, Bishop. I just want to point out there are a number of agitators, Bishop, who come to the shows in our comments. And social media, it presents a new opportunity for us as honest people who want to communicate with one another. It allows us to interact. I mean, certainly without social media, it's unlikely that you and I would have ever met. But there are people who seek to inject discord into the discussion by putting stupid comments here. And because I'm Jewish, there's always people who want me to talk about Israel. But I don't really know anything about Israel other than the most basic stuff that you can read. So I don't really like to talk about things that I don't know anything about. I would certainly have an expert on the matter on, and I could ask them questions based on what they say, but I always observe that it's fake named accounts that want to ask me things about Jewish heritage that they presume I know about simply because I'm Jewish. It's not like I'm born with knowledge. These are things you got to be educated about. And I think at some point in the future, Bishop, it might be interesting for us to find maybe some Talmudic scholar who can talk with us about these things and ask that person questions. I think that these ignorant people using fake names instructing me to do shows about certain topics and to interview people, this is absolutely a tactic of social engineers. My former associate, George, who is widely regarded as a liar and an irresponsible person, used to do that all the time. He would say, oh, Jason should interview this person. Why isn't Jason talking about this or that? These are techniques of manipulation that people try to use to sway the flow of our show and to try to take away from your information. And Bishop, I want to remind everybody who's watching, we have over 1,000 people who are watching this show right now, and I know thousands each week enjoy hearing your information. It's very important that people who are watching here on this free platform, YouTube, and I use the word free very loosely, we wouldn't have this information if the Bishop couldn't carry on doing this work. And in order to do that, Bishop needs your support. So people who are watching can go to paypal.me/GSRR Media Group and support the Bishop's global spiritual revolution. People can also listen to the Bishop on the radio on liferadionj.com. Listeners in the tri-state area can get him on 92.9 FM. And Bishop, you're doing a lot of appearances throughout social media, which is really good. Great way for people to get to know you. It's also important that viewers sponsor this channel by going to patreon.com/crowdsourcethetruth or subscribestar.com/crowdsourcethetruth. Lots of stupid people putting stupid comments in here with names that I'm not even going to say, Bishop, because the name of the account itself is offensive, and perhaps this ignorant individual wants me to say that, get me in trouble for using a word that I can't really use unless I were a rap star. And Bishop, with that, I think we'll be back next week. Anything you'd like to say before we wrap it up?
This has been a powerful, powerful, mind-blowing program connecting these dots. And next week, we're going to get into this connection between Barack Obama, Saudi Arabian money, including Jared Kushner in the mix of this too. It's going to be very fascinating. And I find it so interesting, Jason, that anytime people disagree, okay, I don't mind people disagreeing, but don't be disagreeable. They got to write a whole chapter, right? 2-3 chapters to explain. I know those they just want to be seen. They're not qualified to teach what I'm teaching. Okay, and this is not in disrespect toward them. You can disagree, but don't be disagreeable because they don't know what they're talking about. And this is information connecting these dots, and especially to Black America. Listen, I'm not castigating Barack Obama. I'm just exposing his policies, which counter the values here in the United States of America. Thank you so much, Jason, and we'll definitely see you next week.
Absolutely, Bishop. And thanks everybody for watching. I'm going to be back later tonight with Mike Moore of True Pundit. So people who are sponsors on patreon.com and subscribestar.com or sponsors of True Pundit will be able to watch that sponsor exclusive show. Thanks for watching, everybody. I'll see you later tonight.